Journalist Matt Kennard exposed Labour's Stella Creasy's links to Labour Friends of Israel despite claiming this wasn't true. It started with Stella Creasy condemning Israel's attack on Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. The Foreign Secretary is right to condemn the attack, and it must be seen as more than a reminder of the urgency of a ceasefire with clear evidence of a double assault. The international community must now demand the ICC be able to investigate as a war crime and do so. I mean, I always find it odd seeing a Labour MP say this when they've been, well, I mean, Stella, for example, has been broadly supportive of the government. It's performative, prompting Kennard to call her out. When are you going to resign from Labour Friends of Israel? It's a front group for the Israeli embassy in London. Walthamstow deserves better, much better. And she responds with, for what it's worth, I've never been a member of the Labour Friends of Israel, just as never been a member of the Labour Friends of Palestine. As ever, Matt Kennard, your fact-checking is remiss to say the least. But given you never asked before publishing, I guess not your concern. And he then says, I didn't say you were a member, you are a parliamentary supporter. When will you resign? Again, Walthamstow deserves better, with a screenshot from the LFI website showing she is indeed a supporter. Awkward. So Creasy would have you believe she has nothing to do with LFI. She isn't partisan or biased, despite voting to prescribe Palestine action. She, of course, isn't biased towards Israel. Well, she continued to try and wangle her way out with little success. I genuinely have no idea what that means or where it's from, but it's factually untrue that I've ever been a member of either organisation. If you're criticising me for speaking up for a Walthamstow constituent whose parents were kidnapped by Hamas, then I absolutely did. Labour Friends of Israel is not a membership organisation. MPs and laws become parliamentary supporters if they support apartheid and genocide. Is Stella Creasy now claiming she was signed up as an LFI parliamentary supporter without her consent? Walthamstow MP Stella Creasy was very chatty earlier, but went silent when asked question below. We have to assume the lack of clarity means Labour Friends of Israel is not lying when they say she is a parliamentary supporter of the group. Walthamstow deserves better than this. Well, the editor of Tribune magazine shared some very useful and embarrassing information about Creasy. Not only does Labour Friends of Israel list Stella Creasy as a supporter, her long-term partner Dan Fox is its former director. Supporting a genocidal lobby group is shameful enough. Supporting it and then lying about it is even worse. I mean, I think it's pretty shameful to insinuate people are bad journalists when it's on record that Creasy has connections to LFI and is listed as a parliamentary supporter. Ben, these Labour MPs not only have voted to support Israel, but the way they act and try and excuse it is just shameful.
Yeah, I seem to recall back in 2020 there was a sprightly young leadership candidate, the son of a toolmaker no less, who was running to be Labour leader. Basically, sold himself as Jeremy Corbyn in a suit, and I remember him pledging to me that he would put human rights at the heart of his foreign policy, and he and all of the people who followed him seem to have forgotten that. That seems to have completely gone out the window. That's completely disconnected from anything we now hear from them particularly to do with Palestine. But to be fair, to do with human rights around the world, they're not particularly good on human rights anywhere. Even in the UK, they're talking about following Nigel Farage now, along the lines of like suspending the refugee convention and things like that. Stella Creasy seems to have not been being fully upfront, to put it kindly, about her LFI connections. But of course, she's one part of a much larger problem. You know, she is the moldy slice of bread, but you have to understand that the mold runs all the way through the bread, even if you can't see it. This party is rotten to the core. These are like the dying throes of the Labour Party. And interestingly, my mother, who I was talking to earlier today, has been has been part of the Labour Party, whether a supporter or an actual member, for the last 50 years. And she said that she's now thinking of joining Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party. Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana, I should say, is Your Party right now, which I think says a lot. I think there's a lot of people now who are looking at how Labour are being caught out again and again and again, just like violating their principles again and again and again. And they're thinking, I don't actually want anything to do with this. We really need political parties that reflect our principles and that we actually want to vote for. It's not enough to go, well, I'm not Nigel Farage, because when you're just imitating Nigel Farage, when you're just copying Nigel Farage, I said on GB News, we've ended up in this ridiculous situation where we've got three versions of reform running against each other. We've got the Reform Party, we've got the Conservative Party run by Kemi Badenoch that copies reform, and we've got the Labour Party that copies reform. Like every single party, every single one of those three parties is copying reform down to the letter. And it's getting really tiresome for people looking at voting for them. And when it comes to Israel, Israel and Palestine and LFI, support for LFI, it just underlines the point. It's not the only thing that underlines that point, but it just underlines the point that this is a dead and dying party.
I think it's interesting what you're saying about your mum signing up to your party, because we actually had a comment on one of our videos. It was today actually, that said, me and my mum weren't big Jeremy Corbyn supporters. In fact, we really didn't like him, and my mum's a bit more of a new Labour figure. But the way Keir Starmer has acted, we've both signed up to your party, or this new party. So this is two people who said they had, like, a fact, I think they said Jeremy Corbyn's a creep. I mean, I don't know how he comes to that realization, but two people said they really didn't like Jeremy Corbyn. And now the way Starmer has acted as a supposed Labour leader, he's pushed them left, which for me, I think that sounds fantastic. But that just shows how Keir Starmer and the sort of Morgan McSweeney project, shall we say, policies and morals aside, as political operators, they're terrible. They're terrible. The polls show, even without the inclusion of your party, that they're doing really badly. 20%, 18%. I'm just thinking of James O'Brien saying any other leader would be 20 points ahead. And what Helena said on Navarra Live was funny. She's like, any leader that can just get to 20% would be quite nice. And this is all, self-inflicted.
Yeah, it's self-inflicted. But I think this is what happens if you start prioritizing corporate donors over the rank and file members of your party. And it looks like the Labour Party are going to go the way of the Whigs. It looks like they might well go from being one of the largest parties in Parliament to being virtually irrelevant within a few short years. And the Labour Party can either realise this, or they can sort of get as much of the grain from the stores in the bottom of the ship before they all abandon it like rats leaving a sinking ship. I think many of them have chosen to do the latter.
Well, they did say, one source said, they were shaking off the fleas, and now it's rats sinking the ship, or leaving the sinking ship, that is. I agree. We're seeing seismic shifts within political parties, of course, with reform. And even though Labour won a seismic majority on a very small sort of vote share, 33%, which is pretty low to get over 400 seats, right? Could be political irrelevance, which I cannot wait for.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.